What's happening now across the Niagara frontier? News stories, old stories, stuff you know about and stuff you'd never believe. It's the Niagara Hub Soapbox with Craig Avery.
All right, well, in our continuing mayoral series here, we have a guy that can actually say, been there, done that. We have Mayor Paul Dyster, and we're going to talk a little bit about the campaign and what's happening, what's been done in the past, what are you looking for in the future. So what's up? What's happening here with your campaign? Let's start with the campaign first. What's on your agenda?
Well, I think the campaign is going well, but I was out walking around in it was DeVoe neighborhood, I think, last night, and was knocking on the doors of prime Democrats. So those are people that vote in all the elections. And I ran into an otherwise very well-informed young lady who didn't know that there was an election underway. So,
Wow.
I guess we have to try harder to raise people's consciousness about this.
She thought you were Donald Trump, probably not.
That's possible, yes. I don't know if that would have been... Actually, I think he came up, and I don't think it was in a favorable way. She was a prime Democrat, remember, not a prime Republican. So there are some changes in the way that people are going to be voting this year that we want everyone to be aware of. And I care a great deal about this because the DeVoe neighborhood, which has always been a stronghold for me, it's where I grew up, it's not where I live now, but it's turned out a lot of votes for me over the years. Folks there that voted in previous elections at Maple Avenue School or at the VFW on Lewiston Road are instead going to end up at St. Raphael's, the former St. Teresa's. So there's a little bit of confusion there. And then, of course, the primary election is on a Thursday, September 10th, and presumably because they didn't want people to have to vote the day coming back from the Labor Day weekend. So voting on a Thursday instead of on a Tuesday, and then voting at some unfamiliar polling places, at least in the DeVoe neighborhood. We're going to have to work extra hard to make sure to get people out.
Yeah. And I think that's a good responsibility of the media also, right, Chris? We're going to have to post that. Sure. Vote on Thursday for your primary.
Vote on Thursday, not on Tuesday. At least if you show up Tuesday, you haven't missed it, right?
Now, is that across the nation? That's primary day? Or
I don't think so. I think that's a more localized phenomenon here in Niagara Falls.
All right. So, you've been mayor for how long?
The better part of 8 years now. When I was reelected last time, I was the first mayor reelected in a quarter century, and I've decided to, with a little bit of encouragement from some family members who of course have to put up with this for another 4 years if I'm successful, I've decided to run for another term. Mm-hmm. I like to finish things once I start them. I think we've made a really good start at turning around the city of Niagara Falls. But I think it's also obvious we've still got a long ways to go. I've got several major issues and projects that were part and parcel of why I ran to start with that are still in play out there. And I'm asking the voters for another 4 years to continue the progress that we've made in dealing with some pretty fundamental issues out there.
Let's talk triumphs and challenges. What do you think some of your best triumphs have been so far? What have your best accomplishments?
Well, we said that we were going to bring construction jobs and investment to Niagara Falls, and that's happening. I mean, the downtown is live with projects, and even in the dead of winter, a lot of people were out there working. The Robert Moses Parkway South project, which I view as just a prelude to the big show, which is Robert Moses Parkway North. But Robert Moses Parkway South, from Daly Boulevard down to the park, just the announcement that that project was moving forward encouraged tens of millions of dollars worth of investment from hoteliers in the adjacent neighborhood. And it seems as though that's really going to be transformative for that part of the city.
Excellent. Challenges?
Biggest challenge in the city of Niagara Falls has got to be housing. We had a population of over 100,000 in the early 1960s. We're hovering somewhere around 50,000 now. So you had a huge number of vacant properties, right? Even if you assume that you were kind of crowded in a little bit in the early 60s, people were building on half lots and back lots and all the rest of that. When you're out petitioning, you can see at one time we crammed a whole lot of people into the city of Niagara Falls. So you have a little chance to spread your wings and take up a little more space, but you can only go so far with that. Your population is half of what it was before. There are going to be a lot of empty buildings out there. It pulls the market, out from under real estate, especially in the city of Niagara Falls. For single-family duplex traditional homes, we have a vast oversupply of those. So you end up with a lot of what were at one time really beautiful homes, eventually falling into disrepair. And somebody passes away, they don't have relatives living in the area anymore. They may hold on to the property for a while, try to rent it or whatever, but eventually these things end up either being taken for taxes, or somewhere along the line, either at the tax foreclosure auction or shortly before, they get picked up by out-of-town LLCs, and some of those don't do a very good job taking care of their properties. And you can see as you walk around campaigning, you walk down a street, I think most of us that are out there doing that could tell you without looking which streets are predominantly renters and which streets are predominantly homeowners. If there's one indicator of the state of repair that you're going to find in a neighborhood in Niagara Falls that works every time, that would be it. So that means that we as a city have a very strong interest in encouraging people to become homeowners, and I think now it's a really, really good time for somebody who's looking to be a first-time home buyer to take a really good look at Niagara Falls. Prices are low here still. It won't be that way forever, especially in areas that are going to be impacted by some of the economic development that's happening. For example, if you're interested to live someplace near the upper river off of Robert Moses Parkway South, you better get moving quick, because we expect home values to increase there. And we're hoping for a similar sort of boost of properties in the north end, especially between Main and Whirlpool, as Robert Moses Parkway North moves closer to construction. We've taken aim at the process by which properties get recycled to slumlords through the INREM process. And there was recently a cover story on the Buffalo News about one individual who shall remain nameless. You can go look it up on the website. I'm sure the story is still there. Who's a constant abuser of the system here in Niagara Falls. Not the only one, but a major offender. And I announced in my state of the city back in January that we were going to take aim at that process. Some unscrupulous people have figured out how to game that process, and we obviously have to do an in-round auction, but we're looking at ways of prejudicing the system in favor of first-time home buyers and against land speculators. And I think that over time you're going to see that's going to bring about a pretty fundamental change in the way that properties are transferred when there's a tax foreclosure here in the city of Niagara Falls.
Your community development group seems to be taking charge of this initiative. You think they're doing? What's the game plan for them to get out there, communicate what's available?
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely. I think that we had viewed this mostly as a way of recovering as much as possible of the back taxes that were owed when a property went into foreclosure. And our fiduciary interest still is to try to recover as much of lost taxes as possible through auctioning off the property. But that's not the only thing that we have at stake. There are a lot of other values that attach to that property from the perspective of the city. I mean, for example, its ability to help stabilize or destabilize a neighborhood, depending, what happens there. Its ability to provide a home for someone who then becomes a resident in the city and spends money other, places, has other spin-off benefits that are positive benefits. The whole pride factor, that comes from having an aesthetically better neighborhood. One vacant house, sometimes on a street, one house with the wrong types of tenants in there, people that are not good neighbors, that don't keep up the property, or that are loud, obnoxious, or whatever. It's like, it's a tired old metaphor, but it's like one rotten apple in a barrel of apples. It tends to have a very corrosive effect on the street as a whole. What we're seeing is that it's also the case that taking one house on a street that's at the tipping point and making something really, really positive happen there, and not just talking about physical renovation of the house, but bringing a new family onto the street with new energy, new enthusiasm, that can help reinvigorate a whole city block. So it makes a big difference what happens with these properties, and we're trying to be certain that the system isn't rigged against people who are out there trying to do the right thing.
Let's talk about some of the things that everybody's riled up about. The water, the stink, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you want me to ask you those.
Well,
questions,
I'm having some issues with the Niagara Falls Water Board at the moment, right? And the two prominent ones, I guess you'd say, are the 72nd Street issue with frozen water pipes, and the issue with smells emanating. It's generally believed by most people emanating from the water board's downtown wastewater treatment plant. So we'll start with 72nd Street. This was an issue that developed for the first time in the winter of 13-14. We had a very, very cold winter of 13-14. Had a number of properties where water service froze up on 72nd Street, and the city intervened at that time. We were concerned that we might lose the main at that time, that would disrupt water service over a much larger area. So the city got involved with trying to thaw out the water services out there. Not even necessarily, for the sake of, the individual homeowners, although that they benefited from the city's intervention, but because the city didn't want to lose a whole quadrant of water service, out there. In 14-15, we had a record cold winter, and now having learned more about the water main, we weren't concerned about the water main freezing up, but we had a larger number of individual customers that were losing service out there. So the water board put in place a program, first a drip program to try to keep the water flowing for people without charging it to their water bills. When people froze up, they put jumper hoses from one house to another, got some people back in service that way. And then through our fire department, we instituted a program of emergency water delivery. So if you couldn't get water any other way, you called us up. We would deliver water to your house until you got your water service turned back on. But there really wasn't much that we could do to alleviate the base problem until things thawed out. And when they did, we got together with the water board. We ended up going out and digging some test pits out there. Did a study of what was happening, not just on 72nd Street, but in a variety of other parts of the city, with the idea to try to come up with a project that would work for 72nd Street, but also to try to learn something about the challenge that we're going to face citywide if we don't get some moderation in winter temperatures going forward. So trying to serve two masters, I guess. So we've been waiting, for this study being undertaken by a company called Lockport Geotechnical to be completed. But at the city, at least, we were counting backwards from the end of the construction season, and we had promised the residents on 72nd Street that we were going to get a corrective project done before they had to face another winter with the same situation with their water pipes. And so we felt like we had to take action. So basically last week I held a press conference and announced that we've now identified a funding source. If we had no grant money, which I think is unlikely, I think we are going to be able to access some grant funds for this. If we got no contribution from the water board, we, the city, would be capable of moving forward with a project to replace, it's roughly 3,000 feet of water main on 72nd Street and get it done before the snow flies. So I think I said
at the end of August now.
Yeah, yes. Well, but this is, you can continue working. The ground doesn't freeze up until January or whatever. So, cold temperatures, if I were down in a trench, it might be better to have temperatures in the 50s and temperatures in the 80s if you're doing that type of work. But, as long as you have the ability to seal up any cuts that are done to the street, and we've come up with an assured services agreement with Town of Niagara. They've got a hot paving machine that's capable of going out there and doing first quality patching and paving even after hot asphalt is no longer available from the plant. So we feel very good about being able not just to get this job done, but to be able to repair any damage that's done to the road in the process before the plows have to get out there. Clark Patterson Lee, who are contract engineers to the city, have been called upon to help design the project. One of the reasons why we got them involved, they were not involved in any way in the previous project, the road reconstruction, or the decisions that were made about what pipes to replace, what pipes not to replace by Niagara Falls Water Board before. So as I say, they don't have a dog in the fight. And I told them, just go out, figure out what's gone wrong, come up with a plan of action to fix it, and then we'll get in there and try to figure out where the funding can come from to get the project done. And that's basically where we stand now. What they're talking about doing is abandoning the existing main from Stevenson to Niagara Falls Boulevard in place and building a new water main under the right-of-way, but off of the road surface. So if you think of what we usually call the snow storage area, right, between the sidewalk and the roadway, that would be the prime area to lay a new water main. And then they would carry it to the houses on the opposite side of the street, under the street, using trenchless technology. So that reduces the cost of the project. You know,
Right.
you look back on this, and again, you just wish, and I'm sure they wish at the water board, that they'd made the decision to replace the water main when they were doing the street originally, right?
Wow.
The other issue that we're working right now with the Niagara Falls Water Board is trying to determine what's causing these periodic outbreaks of really intense bad smell. I don't know what else to call it, from the wastewater treatment plant. I know there's been speculation that maybe there's some other sources of the smell, but I've been down there standing right next to the plant, and it's pretty apparent to me and my nose where the smell's coming from. We know that the plant is aging. We know that there are various maintenance issues at the plant, but we also know that now, with all the investment coming into downtown, you've got, I think, $360 million worth of total investment and counting, creeping up Rainbow Boulevard, creeping up Buffalo Avenue towards the wastewater treatment plant. There's a Courtyard by Marriott hotel going in at the former Moore Business Forums on Daly Boulevard. I think you can almost see the wastewater treatment plant, from that property. So we need to do something going forward to try to address the smell issue. And the idea here for me was to assemble a task force, not of technical experts, but of stakeholders, people who care about what happens here and who are willing to speak up in the search for additional funding sources. We're thinking that, at the end of the day, what we're going to find out is that this is basically about money. And we need some people who can explain to the state government, or maybe federal government, or wherever it is that we can go looking for funds, why it's important to address this, not just for the short term, but for the long term. I think if you look at the pattern of investment and construction in downtown Niagara Falls, the development pressure up against the boundaries of where the wastewater treatment plant is located is just going to get stronger and stronger. And for the sake of, even if it costs you a few $1 million to address that, that's a small investment to make, given the hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that's occurring right down the road. So again, we're not trying to point the finger at anybody. We just want to try to figure out, what's the plan for fixing this. We don't see where they're being very proactive in terms of planning a fix, and sometimes it helps if you get a broader group of people out there who can say, hey, I just built a brand new hotel down the street, or I'm a deacon at the church that's right across Buffalo Avenue from where your plant is, and we have to smell this on Sunday mornings, or I'm with the tourism promotion agency, and we're here to help you. We're going to try to help find the money to address the problem once and for all.
Cool. All right, well, I know you got to wrap things up. Let's give it the elevator pitch of why 4 more with Paul here. Well,
Niagara Falls isn't perfect, but I think you'd have to be blind not to see the progress that's been made over the course of the last 8 years. This city took some pretty hard knocks during the period of urban renewal and shortly thereafter, and it's been a long road back. But I think if you get in your car and drive around, if you haven't been in downtown Niagara Falls during the construction season of 2015, get down there and take a look at what's happening. We've got new hotels opening under construction, new restaurants opening or under construction, and I think if you look at downtown Buffalo and see what happened in downtown Buffalo over the course of the last couple of years, Niagara Falls downtown is on the same track, maybe 12 months behind in the construction schedule. But I think that if the downtown is now crossing the finish line, we can count that as a success. What it really does is just brings up the next challenge for me as mayor, and that's to make certain that the benefits of all of the investment and job creation that's occurring in downtown Niagara Falls are spread to every person in every neighborhood in the city of Niagara Falls. That's really the challenge. We at one time here in the city of Niagara Falls had a very prosperous city based on a heavy industrial economy. We can't go back to that, but we can certainly gain in prosperity, quality of life in our neighborhoods with a much more balanced approach to economic development. So you're going to see us take initiatives on tourism, but you're also going to see us be very active in pursuing spin-off business from the big Solar City development in of Buffalo. You're going to see us caring about the aesthetic appearance of our downtown, but you're also going to see us working to improve quality of life in every neighborhood in the city of Niagara Falls. And we're going to build hotels, but we're also going to build playgrounds. And at the end of the day, we hope we're creating a city of Niagara Falls that isn't somehow, getting into a time machine and returning to the 1950s and 1960s when some of us in the boomer generation were growing up. We know that can't happen, but what we can do is create a city of Niagara Falls where our children and our grandchildren are going to be able to settle and raise their families, and they're going to have the same sort of wonderful golden age memories of a somewhat different city of Niagara Falls, but memories that are equally glowing as those that we had a generation ago.
Cool. Good luck.
Thank
Keep us
you.
posted. Thanks for coming by.